Welcome to the Rock Your Comeback podcast. I'm Nichole Eaton, author of the books Rock Your Soul and Rock Your Comeback, as well as an intuitive therapist, and I'm here to remind you of your power. This podcast focuses on mindset and inviting the universe in to create a life that feels so good, so aligned, and so authentic. I hope you're ready. Hey guys, it's Nichole Eaton and welcome back to another episode of the Rock Your Comeback podcast. Today's guest is Resiliency Coach and author Nichole Dickinson, and we get to chat about finding your resiliency in your black hole moments. Nichole gives practical tips and real actionable steps to help you start digging your way out. I hope you love this episode as much as I do, and if it resonates with you, make sure to let me know, share it on social media, tag me in it, and or send it to a friend who might need it. It's a huge way to support this podcast, to share the content, and if you can, leave a positive review. That also helps. Also, if you have kept an eye on my Instagram, NicholeEaton.xo, or my emails, I've been debuting a new project, which is called the Comeback Club. It's an online membership space because I don't love social media. I actually hate waking up and plugging into social media, and I really wanted to create a place that is positive, a place where people can be vulnerable, where we can learn and dream and play together and support each other. So this membership program is something I've absolutely poured my heart into, and I think you guys are going to love it. It's the only place with all of my trainings that I've literally ever made that I've charged hundreds and hundreds of dollars for previously. And each month you'll get a brand new training from me or a guest expert, a weekly journal prompt to help you stay accountable to your inner space, and monthly live Q&As where you get to ask me all the questions you have about your life, about where you're stuck, and about your comeback. So this is something near and dear to my heart. So keep your eye out on it on social media for this, or dropping in your emails. Just shoot me a message. I'll make sure you get all the details. We're launching soon, so I hope you're ready for it. And meanwhile, enjoy the podcast. Welcome back to the Rock Your Comeback podcast. I'm your host, Nichole Eaton, and today I'm joined with a really cool guest, Nichole Dickinson. She is a resilience coach, a TedX speaker, and author of the memoir, Breaking Into My Life. Welcome, Nichole.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate the invite.
I love when other people compliment the work that I'm doing, and I just thought, man, we all need a little like help with resilience.
I think so.
So I always like to know a little bit of a backstory. How did you end up getting into the work and resilience? Like where did that come from?
Yeah, it all sort of was born in the pandemic, right? My clients were really keen on how do we help our people working remotely, build their resilience so they're not burning out. How do we take care of our people? And so that's when my resilience work actually really took root. But it was a culmination of my experience growing up with my mom who had bipolar disorder, navigating my own depression, my own clinical treatment that I received, and then years and years of self-discovery work. So it was sort of in response to what was being asked of me. And I just sort of leaned into that and said, yeah, let's do that. Let's help these folks feel better.
I always love that a lot of people who do this work have it born out of having been in that heavier darkness and having worked their way out. I would love to hear your comeback story. So you grew up with a mom with bipolar. What did life look like for you during that time?
Yeah, it's so funny because I don't know that I look at it as like a real comeback story. I always have believed that life circumstances show up to reveal to us our inner strength and our capacity to overcome adversity. I didn't know, for a little girl growing up with a mother who had bipolar disorder, I didn't know any different, right? That was my norm, right? This is how you take care of your mom, right? It's not the regular way, like parents taking care of a child. So I need to step up and care for my mom. And so that was my norm. I didn't really know much different. So that experience shaped me. It taught me deep empathy and compassion, and just was something that made me incredibly, I guess, empathetic. I want to say I'm an empath now. I'm always the person that's reading the room and checking the moods of people and really plugging in oh, that person's hurting, that person over there is struggling, so I think it really did gift me as well. It also taught me my own strength to overcome, such a challenge and be able to go on and get a good job and be a contributing member to society and not fold because of the abuse. My mom was very abusive. Yeah. I mean, like my comeback story, I would say would probably be, I have to look at the lowest moment in my journey, right? So as an entrepreneur, I've been an entrepreneur now over 2 years, close to 3 years, and probably even a little bit longer than that. I lose track of time. I tell the story. It's very real and it makes me remember where I've come from. I spent an amazing 19-year career in the pharmaceutical industry, loved it. It was great. I thought, I'm going to retire into the sunset. I'm going to live this amazing retirement life like all my colleagues have. But things were supposed to go differently, I suppose. So I was living in a quaint home in a quaint town. People perceived our home as the dollhouse. I was happily married, and then realized we weren't happily married and we were going to be getting divorced. So the divorce part was really hard for me. I remember going to court on a Monday to finalize the divorce. And then 2 days later on a Wednesday, I got the call that I would be losing my job.
Oh, okay. So all at once. One
all
swoop.
At once. Like,
yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So two, the 1-2 punch, you're losing your marriage and you're losing your stability, like you're no longer married. Nobody's going to take care of you. What will you do? Right. So that was probably the most darkest moment of my journey. And then it was sort of like, okay, well, how do I create my future? Right. So what's next for me? And that's when I started to lean into what I knew was in my heart, was to make a bigger difference in the world and be part of the solution when it came to helping people not suffer. So, yeah.
One of the phrases you use that I absolutely love is, how do I create my future? Because I think when we're in that like space where things like the rug's just getting pulled out from under us, it can be really easy to shift into that victim mentality of like, why is this all happening? And what's the point of it all? And, every time I try to do something else happens. When's the other shoe going to drop? And I think that the mindset shift with the power of questions of, how do I create my future is one of the most powerful things that we can do, especially in those, I call them, and I refer to them in my upcoming book as black hole moments, like those moments where you just feel like, I don't even know how I get out of this, How did you find that question though? Because I feel like if I was in a position where I just lost my 19-year career and I just lost, my relationship, how do you go from being in a space where you're just feeling that heaviness to even finding the question of, how do I create my future?
It's not something that comes overnight. I danced with it for a while. I struggled with it for a while. I disagreed with it for a while. I think that's part of the journey, is allowing yourself to feel what you're feeling in the moment. I'm not going to say, oh, I just woke up and just decided everything was great. Like, no, like you got to feel the feelings. You got to feel the anger. You got to feel the despair. You got to feel the fear, the pure fear. Like, oh my goodness, like, how am I going to do this? I don't know this. I've never done this before. So it's terrifying, right? Like, how do I figure this out? I just think I just gave myself patience and grace to feel all the feels and arrive at where I was supposed to take the next step. Meditation is a really important part of my life. And I would say leaning into the meditation and really asking my higher self, like, what's my next step? Because I don't know the answer. So maybe you can give me some insight on what the heck do I do? Do I fight to get another corporate job and become a cog in the wheel? Do I do that? Or do I take what I really am passionate about and go and try to do something I've never done and be an entrepreneur? And that's ultimately what I wound up doing.
I think there's so many like beautiful nuggets of wisdom in here, because I think when we have those hard moments, our like instinct is to try to get rid of them. Yeah. And I think there is this brilliant piece of acceptance and like putting yourself in the process of feeling the feelings. And then the word you mentioned that I'm just going to repeat, and this is so funny because I've just believed that like there's so many beautiful synchronicities, right? And earlier today, I was reading something in the Course in Miracle that it said infinite patience breeds instant results. And so it's almost like when we find that place of acceptance within ourselves and that space of just, okay, I'm willing to be patient. I'm willing to trust the process. I'm willing to sit in the silence and sit with myself. I think is like the place for me when I stop fighting reality and start hearing my inner voice. Have you always been somebody who like connected with their higher self, or was that crisis of faith,
No, I think like when I was married, I remember trying to like try to do this meditation thing. I'd never done it before. I remember going away to St. John because my father was getting married and he was getting remarried. And I remember the place I had the privilege of staying at was incredible and it had a healing center. And I remember meeting this lovely lady and she was going to explain to me how to have my first meditation. And then she gave me a CD and I took the CD home. And I remember sitting on the floor of my spare room, like trying to get this meditation thing down. And it was so amazing and frustrating at the same time. And I loved it in the end. In the journey, It's hard because you really are not familiar with what does it mean to just sit in the silence and feel the feelings and understand what's going on and not think about the dinner you have to make or the groceries you got to go buy or the person you got a phone call back and all these other things. I think that meditation has been an evolution for me. Like where I am now with my meditation practice is very different from when I first tried it and when I first struggled through it. I will say that it's a journey just like anything else. It's the consistency that yields the magic. And I'm clear about that now. Like I do like the 30-minute meditations and I just go, whoa, that's pretty cool. At the end of it, I feel completely restored. And then when I was going through the whole loss of job, loss of marriage, I started to use meditation to understand the identities that I had taken on, right? I had worn an identity. I am an employee in a pharmaceutical company. That was my identity. You take that away from me. Who am I? I'm a wife. You take that identity away. Well, who am I now? So meditation was really helpful in helping me reconnect to who I really was. I wasn't those identities,
Yeah. And I think so many of us really become the roles we're in. And then if the role ends, and that's the thing is that most roles have a conclusive point, they have an ending. And so, I think about this with my kids. My daughter is, she's 15. She's getting, to the end of high school or not end of high school, but you know what I mean? It's a lot closer than it was when she was 5 that I have to think about what happens to me when the kids are out of the house. Who am I when, I got pregnant when I was 20. And so I really, for me, didn't have much time as an adult without being a caretaker. And so it's really interesting to come back in and check in with those identities that we've created for ourselves and say, okay, so what brings me joy? What things light me up? And I love that you've talked about meditation as such a gateway to that. If somebody was anti-meditation, what kind of things might you suggest as a roundabout way to connect with those ideas and those that core identity?
I get this all the time. I am coaching so many different individuals and I always tell them you can't fall into your day. You have to have an intentional practice in the morning, even if it's as little as 10 minutes. And so I introduce meditation and the resistance I get is amazing. No, Michelle, I have a very overactive mind. That might not be for someone else, but my mind, it's going way faster than the average person. I'm like, no, your mind is just as crazy as mine, right?
Yep.
We all have these excess thoughts all the time. So one of the things I challenge them to do is if they're into yoga, I'm like, that thing called savasana at the end, right? That's a taste of yoga. Do you like that? Well, yeah, I love that. That's the best part of yoga. I mean, it's the dessert of yoga, if anyone, knows, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so I'll get them to relate to meditation in that way. But then the other thing I do is I say, hey, could you try something for 3 minutes? Could you go to YouTube and could you look up Deepak Chopra's 3-minute meditation? And could you just try that this week in the morning and just see if you can follow his 3-minute guided meditation and check in with yourself after the 3 minutes. And if you feel any different or any better, we'll talk about it. Or if you don't feel anything, we'll talk about it. But my biggest thing is to get them to realize it's a gift to learn how to be present with yourself. And meditation is the access to that. And I don't expect you to sit there for 30 minutes and think that you're going to have an amazing meditation, no thoughts. But what I do want to challenge you to do is just try 3 minutes. We can do anything for 3 minutes. And I think that meditation has been such an amazing access for people who don't have a good relationship with meditation or have none at all.
Yeah. I love that you're, breaking it down. That's a huge thing we talk about on this podcast is this is so cohesive as, finding smaller ways to do the bigger thing. And it kind of even to touch on a podcast I did a bit ago, when we're not paying attention to that internal world, we're trying to control everything around us. Like our energy is just everywhere around us. And so the power in really getting back to that question of how do I create my future lies with coming back in and creating any kind of practice that feels good and right to you to find your way back into that internal space so you can look at it. So you can say, okay, well, how did I even acquire all these roles? How did I acquire the employee? And I'm somebody who's too scared to, I actually had a conversation with a good friend of mine, and there was an opportunity for her to be part of a business. And she was like, well, you're somebody who takes risk, and I'm somebody who like needs a 401k. And so it was just funny because I'm just like, or you're just scared, and that's okay. That's a part of you that feels scared. And so until we take time to create intention within our internal space, we're just grasping at everything else around us.
The one thing I say, absolutely. The one thing I say to people all the time is we live in a society that has groomed us to look for the answers out there. Yeah. All of the answers that we want are out there. They're in books, they're in documentaries, they're in investigations, whatever. They're information we need is out there. And I'm like, I think you should stop for a second and recognize how much information you already have within you, but you can't hear it because you're so overstimulated by the noise and by the habit of reaching outward to get the answer. When if you just sat in the silence and connected to yourself, you might be so amazingly surprised at the answers that would reveal themselves to you. But you have to be willing and have the courage to get quiet and sit in the silence. As uncomfortable as it might be, as frustrating as it might be. Like I love Dr. Joe Dispenza. He says, tell your mind it's like an animal and you're going to feed it when it's done. You're going to get the coffee when it's done. But right in this moment, we're going to sit and we're going to be in the silence and we're going to feel the emotions or whatever there is that needs to surface. But we get to say how we train our minds.
First off, I love Joe Dispenza. Becoming Supernatural is one of my all-time favorite books. One of the things that you said was the courage to get quiet. And I think that it's scary for a lot of people who have been distracting themselves for long periods of time, or who just have some people just they go through something hard and scary and then they keep their head down and they go into a workaholic mode, or they keep their head down and they pour into their kids, or they just don't touch it and they don't look at it. And so it does take courage to hold space for something hard. And it does take courage to hold spaces for parts of you that you don't really love. And it does take courage to confront the truth within yourself. And I think that we don't think of meditation as an act of courage, but it really, really is, because there's a lot of people out there who are not doing that work. There's a lot of people out there who are bulldozing their way through other people, who are not treating others with kindness, who are in a self-defense mode and protective mode. And I really think that doing this work gives the gateway for you to become one of those people who is the model for people who are in the dark or having a hard time, or are carrying around and dragging around this heaviness, because it's heavy. So I really love to think of meditation and just that taking time for yourself as a courageous act. That's a really cool idea.
Yeah, I know a lot of people, I have friends in my life that they put their head down and then they just work themselves. They think they're working themselves through it. And they're not, right? Like it's an avoidance. So it does take real courage to say, I'm just going to sit and I'm going to be with these thoughts. I'm going to be with these emotions that I keep avoiding. Another one is Kyle Cease, who says, just sit there, close your eyes and watch the show. Watch the show, get present to what's really going on and what you're really feeling that you've been suppressing, that you've been avoiding because it's too ugly to deal with. And you're just going to work yourself, into oblivion and pretend it's not there and hope it goes away. And it won't. It'll
just sit. And I really believe that these events, these hard emotions, they're energy. And until they either transform into something or come out of your person, I'm a big person for meditation, but also just for writing it out, speaking out, getting it just physically, energetically out of your body in whatever way you feel called to, is such a powerful way to move through that black hole experiences, even if you're not ready to sit down and meditate. Because again, act of courage, just being willing to say this happened to me and it was hard, I think is one of the most powerful things that we can do. I'm loving this conversation. And as we talk about becoming present, what are some other, you were talking about just burnout earlier I feel like when I'm burnt out, I don't have space to meditate. I don't have space for anything. So what are some measures that you encourage people to take to help their resilience and keep them from being in that burnout situation. Because when I'm burnt out, self-care even feels like burnout. It even feels like too much.
Yeah. Well, how about we avoid burnout? I mean, that's my whole spiel when it comes to resilience. Let's boost our resilience so that we don't ever have to deal with how hard it is to come back after being burned out. Resilience is really a lifestyle of things you do every day. It's not the occasional vacation that you grab the trapeze onto. Oh, if I could just get to that vacation, I'm going to be good. Or the massage you're going to do every few weeks that makes you feel good for a few moments, relieve some stress. But it's really about the tending the garden of your mind and doing things for yourself every day. Self-care should be integrated as part of your lifestyle. I mean, that's the key here if you want to avoid burnout and preserve your mental health. So, it starts with, what do you do every day to fill your own cup? A lot of people are at the effects of their life. They're at the effects of the expectations other people put on them. They're at the effects of, I have to do this for work and I have to do this for my family. Where do you come in? Where does your self-care come in on a daily basis? Are you making time to move your body? Are you getting enough sleep so that you can come at the day and just deal with the stress of life that's going to show up? We know one thing: stress is inevitable. One thing we can do is we can fill our arsenal so that we feel like empowered to deal with that stress. If we start the day and we're depleted, we're never going to be able to navigate the stresses that are coming at us. So, advocate of forcing yourself to get present to gratitude. Gratitude for me is like the most important thing, because I know my mind wants to look for everything that's wrong or broken and focus on that and step over all of the amazing abundance and love I have right in front of me. So for me, practicing gratitude every morning, forcing my mind to look for 3 things I'm grateful for, is so powerful, because it tells my mind we're going to start looking for more good. It's very easy in a world that's changing and there's a lot of movement and a lot of upset across the globe to get sucked into everything is bad and everything feels heavy and everything is out of my control. Put yourself back in control by forcing yourself to look at all that you do have. And that's huge. So gratitude and meditation are my 2 things I do every morning. If I do nothing else for myself, those 2 things are happening for me for about 15 minutes before I rush into my day.
And, I think for some people, like, gratitude is like a hard thing to connect to from a negative space. So I even like to just, if you can't find something you're thankful for, or find that real, true, honest gratitude, like thankfulness, I even like to just say, okay, so what's something that's going in the room that you like? Okay, well, I just bought these chairs and I really like these chairs. Or, okay, like, I really like the dress I picked out today. This is a really fun color. Being willing to stair step your healing is such an important thing, because sometimes these ideas for where you're at are too big. If you're in that deep, dark black hole moment, it's too big, in finding ways to it. And then once you get to it, it's a program. This is what I do in the morning. And I know this makes a massive difference, and it keeps me in an energy and a mindset that feels really good all day. And I think that there's so many ways. And one of my favorite things about self-help in general, and one of the things I think people should really pay attention to about self-help in general, you don't have to take all the tools. You just take the ones that feel right to you. You leave the rest. And at different points in your journey, different things will feel good and different things will feel bad. And maybe some things that you did before will not feel the same as what you can do or are called to do now. So I love these ideas. And I know a lot of people, like, when we talk about self-care, and it's specifically, with moms, I would say the argument is, when I take care of myself, I feel guilty. And I'm curious what your response is to that.
I always bring it back to, are you showing up the best version of yourself when you don't take care of yourself? Like, I get it, the sacrifice that moms have, God bless them, the loved ones they want to care for, getting the best version of themselves if they're not cared for.
I think that's a powerful point. I also think of just modeling for my kids of what I want them to treat themselves the way I'm treating me right now. Would I want them to talk to themselves the way that, I'm talking to me right now? And I think that even just thinking about, okay, so if we can spin the guilt a little of, like, here's how I show my kids how to take care of themselves. Here's how I show them what quiet times. Here's how I show them what meditation looks like. It is never too early. My kids have been meditating since they were, 4 or 5. My daughter is naturally an anxious kid. And so she meditates before bed and when she wakes up in the morning, even if it's just for a few minutes of just pouring light down over herself or grounding herself or just breathing, like, because I've integrated that in my life, they've integrated it in theirs. And now she had a softball game last night and she was getting a little nervous because it was a pretty big game. And before she's up to bat, she's just like in the corner by herself breathing. And I'm like, I wish I had those skills when I was a kid, because I was not in the corner breathing. I was crying and like panicking because I had too much homework, just little things. But it's never too early to demonstrate how to show up for yourself or your kids.
So true. So true. So true. I love that so much.
So as we come to a close here, I think this has been just a really helpful conversation for a lot of people. And I'm curious if you had 3 solid tips that just would help people find their resilience in their life, like, what would you tell them?
Well, the 2 I've already given you, meditation and gratitude, I think that they are absolutely the most powerful thing you can do in the morning. I would say it really does start with how you start your day. So when I say don't fall into your day, it's don't hit snooze 5 times and then rocket out of your bed to hit your day running and introduce all the unnecessary cortisol in your life. Be more intentional about how you start your day, and it'll set the tone for your entire experience and how you feel, right? Our feelings are the barometer of so much. And if we can give ourselves a chance to feel good by starting our day off with more intentionality, and that includes don't lay in bed and scroll on social media. I love that Jay Shetty says, don't do that because you wouldn't invite 100 strangers into the intimacy of your bedroom. Why would you invite 100,000 people into your phone and inundate your brain that's just trying to wake up and ease into the day? Like, give yourself a gift of not inundating your mind with too much information. Like, emerge from your morning in a very calm way, and you will have a much better experience for yourself. And you'll feel more empowered if you take a minute to give yourself the gift of meditation or gratitude and a cup of tea and light a candle and take a few minutes for yourself to start your day. It will make a difference for how the day unfolds. I promise you.
I think that is, I have a love-hate relationship with social media in general. I would much rather connect with people in real life. That's like where my excitement lies. But, I think this is total full circle moment back to the beginning conversation of paying intention and creating intention around your internal space and attending to it and being mindful of being absorbed in that external space. And I think in the morning, if you can create that separation between you and social media and saying, I'm honoring my internal space because it matters, because my peace matters, because there's really nothing I'm going to plug into on there that's going to bring me joy. Probably not, so if we know that we also have to be like great protectors of our peace, and we have to be great. Nobody is going to pay attention to our internal space as much as we are. And we are the CEO of our internal space. So we have to be really, really intentional about finding time and creating time for that. So I think that's a fantastic tip that is simple, it's easy, it's doable, and not enough people are doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And I've seen it. I mean, I coach a ton of people now, and that's one of the biggest things that I have to talk to them about is like how they're starting their day. So many fall into the day. We can fix that. We absolutely can.
Oh, I love this. How can people connect with you? What's the best way for them to reach you?
For social media, on TikTok, Resilience Coach Nichole. You can follow me on TikTok, or if you want to have a conversation, obviously you can hit me up there, but you can go to LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my second home. So it's Nichole E. Dickinson on LinkedIn. I love hearing from people. So if you want to hit me up there, that's probably the best place.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining today. I will make sure to link everything for Nichole in the information details section, so you can go right to her, connect with her. But yes, thank you so much for coming. This was lovely.
Thanks for having me.
Make sure to keep an eye out for my latest book, Rock Your Comeback, The Down-to-Earth Guide to Reclaiming Your Power, out this summer. I'd love to connect with you. Make sure to follow me on Instagram or TikTok at NicholeEaton.xo. Thanks for listening to the Rock Your Comeback podcast. I hope you're feeling inspired, motivated, and ready to take on the world. Now go step back into your power. The world's been waiting for you. But first, if you could, leave me a review or share with a friend. Thank you.